Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 124 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me as always, we have my co host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And joining us this week because we have monk talents, we've got, of course, the big man himself, Babylonius.
Hello.
and
Man,
yeah, monk
I'm
talents
working
landed
out. I'm
this
trying
week.
to get smaller.
Huh?
Calling me the big man. I said I'm working out. I'm trying to get smaller.
Yeah, well, nothing will change the fact that you are at the top of the admin list.
Yeah, I know. Alphabetically.
Alphabetically, you are actually because Anomoly is currently duck main.
It's
Exactly.
true. That is
Um,
true.
Mistweaver memes are a special thing.
We're special. We're just special, I think.
So our tentative plan, we're going to see how this goes. Our tentative plan, after our experience with the Shadowlands monk abilities, where we had like multiple 3-hour podcast episodes, is to break things down a little bit. So today we are going to be focusing on the monk class tree. And then in future episodes, we will do deep dives into the Windwalker, Brewmaster, and Mistweaver trees, the spec-specific ones. Depending on time, we might go and touch on some of the highlights from the spec trees, like, what's the biggest thing that you're like super excited to see coming back kind of thing. But the primary focus for today is going to be on the class trees. Before we get into that, I think there's two things that we wanted to touch on. We are going to get through them pretty quickly because class trees. So first thing, we're back in Sepulcher, right? Fated Sepulcher this week.
Mm-hmm.
Did not go well at all for my rate.
So there's
yeah,
go for it.
I was gonna say so it was fun. It was fun for a little bit until we realized that it's actually only one of the affixes, the dispel one, right? To dispel drops circle puddles on the ground and sort of you get a nice little buff, but there's also like a harmful part of that where like it increases a bunch of things. Namely, it increases the debuffs you get for certain abilities like the bombs on Jailer, which means Jailer bombs go off sooner, which means every weak aura you ever use or boss mod you use was broken this week if you soaked a puddle before getting a bomb.
Yep.
So we didn't do it on Mythic because to be fair, we didn't get there on Mythic. We had other issues. And yeah, even on Heroic, it was annoying to try and have people remember like something they did for 300 pulls of just watching a weak aura now to forget about watching the weak aura and watch your actual debuff. So
yeah, there's actually extra spice with that too. So the issue is that the creation spark like infusion that you get increases the rate at which time flows. This is the rate at which time flows, which just means everything ticks faster. But if it expires after you jump, then it stops flowing faster, and your 1 seconds left on the debuff goes back to like 2 or 3 seconds left, and then you've jumped too early, and now you die.
I don't think we hit that issue. Ours was always like people jumping in late because it was sped up, but
yeah,
that's also fun. That's so dumb.
You could be late and then suddenly too early.
Yeah,
exactly.
We had that happen in an alt heroic last night. Somebody jumped in as it was expiring, and they went, "What the heck? My debuff just got longer."
Yeah, that's always fun. Yeah, so there was definitely some shenanigans there. There was definitely some shenanigans also. Similar debuff on Lahuvum, with some of the increase. So the debuff also increases cosmic damage, which technically not much did cosmic damage before Sepulcher, but there's multiple bosses that have it, and that's one of Lahuvum's. It's
the other way around. So it's the debuff. If you have the debuff before the dispel, it's a cosmic damage dot.
Right.
If you miss any of the soaks, it applies a cosmic damage dot to the whole raid. When you go into the protoform bays, you get a stacking cosmic damage taken increase.
Oh, right. Sorry, my fault.
And then, so that means that, like, you have to dispel effectively before the bays, unless people have like really significant personals or if it goes on a tank, because otherwise they just die to the dot in the bay and it gets dispelled anyway mid bay, and
soak.
And you have to soak in the middle of doing the bay, which is not ideal. And then if you ever miss a soak, within
Going into
like
a
30
bay.
seconds of going into a bait, you just wipe because the whole raid has this cosmic damage dot that they then take like plus 100% damage from during the bay and just get destroyed.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a fun week, we'll say.
Yeah.
We basically, I mean, to be fair, we didn't even get Anduin down in our raid. So like we basically spent a bunch of time on Lahuvum, a bunch of time actually on Halandras, but mostly because we had like just a weird comp for it.
Okay.
Like a ton of melee. Like at one point we had like one of our melee trading with one of our ranged players, which
Oh
just
boy.
everybody was out of position. So yeah, it was just it was not a fun raid week, we'll say, going back there with all the affixes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad it's. But we did get your was this your supposed nerf that you called last week? Because we did get a nerf.
We got a 5% health nerf to all fated bosses.
Is that
I think we're getting a really significant one like tomorrow. I think we're getting a
okay?
big one tomorrow. I think we're going to see very significant nerfs to the downsides of all the affixes, more significant nerfs to the bosses across the board, significant targeted nerfs to bosses like Kel'Thuzad and Council of Blood, and like I think they're gonna go nuclear on it and be like, yeah, we want 1,000 guilds clearing Mythic every week.
I
Which,
mean, I
I
hope
mean,
so.
they're right. That seems reasonable. Like, I had the idea because I mean, I remember joking about this, long ago. But let's just, just remove the legendary cap. Like
That
let's
requires
fill every
your spec to have good legendaries.
well, but let's just fill every slot that's not tier with legendary. Or you know what? Let legendaries activate your tier bonus and remove the legendary cap. And just fill your
Jesus.
spec with legend because I said this back with corruption. Like just let it, for the last couple weeks, just let it go absolutely wild.
The funny
So
thing is,
why not do that?
it would actually not be correct for a lot of specs to put all of your legendaries on because they're going to be 20 or no, they're going to be 15 eye levels below, 13 eye levels below what you can get from Mythic.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, but the bonus should be more than the item level loss.
I think
But
you are
whatever.
dramatically overestimating the value of most
Some of them,
legendaries.
sure. But I mean, you're still gonna have your tier spots,
Yeah, like Brewmaster would put
still
on
like
like one extra legendary, maybe two if you wanted to put on the like Celestial Infusion one.
yeah, but
Uh,
that's ticks. Like who cares about ticks?
my mage would probably put on Disciplinary Command in addition to Sun Kings, and that would be it.
I just want to play Pharaoh with Frenzy Brand and Apex and Unity and Circle of Life and Death,
Thank you,
whatever.
friends.
Just have everything tick super fast on everything, proc everything. Like
Just go
just
wild, yeah.
yeah, just get that ferocious bite damage up to 90, 95% of my overall damage instead of just 65 or 70.
But yeah,
That would be interesting.
Yeah, just let it go wild.
so that's been our experience with Sepulcher. It's kind of been wild. Actually, one final note: if you do try and go pug Jailer or do the Jailer on Heroic, get a large group. The number of soaks that you get doesn't scale with group size, so it is actually significantly
Oh,
harder to do with a
oh
small
my
group than with a large group. We ran into this last night in that alt heroic. We were struggling with getting all the soaks in phase 1 of Jailer because you got to do the tank soak and you got to do the fated affix soaks, and we had like 13 people. And we were finally like, well, we don't think this scales up, so we just grabbed 12 people from LFG, doubled our group size, and then like two-shot the boss.
That's awesome. That's
fun.
funny. Nice. Yeah. It was definitely an adventure. It was funny. Funny. It was probably the worst Fated week in my experience, which
Really?
is yeah. I think it was worse than Nathria, and it was definitely worse than
Well,
Sanctum.
like in
Uh,
Nathria, we wiped to Fated Affixes. We wiped to the reconfiguration emitter on Council of Blood, but that's just missed kicks, right? That's just
yeah.
missed kicks. Um, Wiping on Liavum to just like the dot and to the
Is it not?
fact that you have to dispel the dot early, forcing really like bad overlaps where you have to like do moats, and then while people are running out with bombs, you have to the um dispel the things and do the soaks, and then you have the tank mechanic immediately. There's like this really awkward timing where you have to do it or you just like get destroyed.
Mhm.
And then couple it with the fact that Live Them is actually really, I don't know if it's broken or what, but it gives you 4 dispels on pull, where literally
Yeah,
every
we
other
saw
boss
that.
gives you 2. Gives
Yeah,
you 4
yeah, we
dispels
saw
on
that.
pull and then
Mhm.
2 at every point after that. And I don't know if they thought that was going to make it easier because it sure as hell did not.
Now, considering you three healed, like we three healed it, so it was like one of those dispels just expired, like
We
based on timing.
we had hard stacked everybody in melee because the way that Creation Spark works, the dispel puddles, the soak puddles appear around anybody in raid, not around the person that is dispelled. So we hard stacked everybody in melee and hit mass dispel.
That'll work too. That'll work
Mhm.
too. Um, well, cool. Well, yeah. I mean, I think I don't. Yeah. Other than the fact that hopefully they change some of those affixes next time we get in there. It was just a generally a not a fun raid week. We'll say.
Yeah.
Um, for
Yeah, I
saying
think
or for saying for Spectre.
it'll be interesting to see going into Fate Nathria next week, what changes they make, what the different affixes look for things. Really ultimately these first couple weeks were the testing phases for these, for these affixes
Testing
and
it
these
in
raids.
prod.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So it'll be interesting, where they tweak and what they tweak.
So the
Yeah.
other thing from
Like
this week, we had patch 9.2.7 arrive, which
We
is
did.
the auction house patch. We talked about this last week a little bit. Um, it's been a little bit of a mess.
It's down
man,
again, by the way.
I was gonna
Auction
say
house
yeah, WoW had just said that the auction house is down again.
again. Yeah, it's been. I
So,
mean, when it's up and working, stuff's cheap and stuff sells. Like I think
Yeah,
I like post stuff for whatever the min buyout is, and it sells within minutes now.
mhm,
Um, and the buyouts are much lower on certain things. Like some things are still around the same price as they were on Mal'Ganis, just looking at
yeah,
the history. But most of it's cheaper, which is cool.
yeah.
Um,
There's
well,
a lot
the
of
gain is
cheapers.
gonna be on the smaller, the big servers, Mal'Ganis, Illidan,
Yeah.
Area
yeah.
52. They're not gonna see the gain that, a small server will.
You say that there's
Uh,
actually like a number of things that did get cheaper on Area 52 that they weren't like that expensive, but you take 30% off the price because now you have the entire region's worth of stuff on there. Stuff like armor kits and
Mm,
in certain enchants that people weren't crafting very much, and missives for legendaries all got quite a bit cheaper.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so it's been fun when it's up, although yeah, it was down for most of Tuesday, I think, or at least late Tuesday into Wednesday, and
Yeah.
then I guess it's down again now. So,
There was
um,
also a bug where you could effectively dupe gold. If you canceled your auction, it
yeah,
would send you the gold
that's
as if it sold. Um, and so
awesome.
that prompted them to take it down initially, and then they've had other issues. Like right now, I guess it's down again. But in between that point in time where they brought it back up after fixing that, and now, it, different items you've been unable to buy.
right.
Just like it will tell you that like that item is no longer for sale, and
Mhm.
not sure why. My guess is that it's some like either some issue with the volume being like the purchase volume being so high that it just breaks, or it's like bots doing their cancel scans and reposting things, and it just
Hmm.
like not being able to keep up.
Yeah, yeah, it's and to be fair too, on Tuesday it was the laggiest I've seen any rating instances. Like it was worse than like peak Sire in original Nathria. Like we were
Mm.
seeing like 3-4 seconds of like nothing happening and then a bunch of catch up on
Yeah,
every boss fight. Like it didn't matter the like Skull when the blue portals came or the blue puddles came out in melee, like it would lag and like melee would randomly get hit or you'd look like you're out of it. So
yeah, yeah.
ability lag
Dude,
too. So it was
imagine rating Tuesdays.
oh god, I hate it.
Right?
There's some times where I'm like, why does my like just move it to Wednesday on patch weeks? Like,
Yeah.
oh,
If you could just do that and no other, issues arise, then I think
yeah.
you'll see a lot of teams that do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If it still worked out that you can still get 2 raid days in at least for us. But yeah, it's it was again, I think a rough week, but the auction house is cool. So when it works, it's awesome. So um, cool. And I think the only other thing that happened last week before we get into class, our talent trees from Alpha, is they did a bunch of tuning to some of the more difficult dungeons in Mythic Plus. So um, actually, it's kind of a bunch across the board, but the big ones were Iron Docks got a bunch of nerfs to damage across the board, um, to a bunch of trash actually. And then similarly, Lower Karazhan also received a bunch of nerfs to trash. The ushers in particular got hit. Couple of counter specific nerfs. Maiden of Virtue's Absorb Shield got it nerfed again, which is interesting. And then they also made more nerfs to Upper Kara, specifically Shade. His shimmer damage got reduced. That's when he splits into three. And sort of the stacking dot that occurs there is reduced. And then Mana Devour got some damage reduction to its AoE, the energy discharge. So yeah, so tons of Mythic Plus nerfs, particularly to the Karazhans and the Iron Docks, the older dungeons, which I think makes sense. I think they just haven't seen them on live for years now. Just didn't get the original tuning right. So
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
yeah, that is the. I think that's it for. I don't want to go too much into that. I think that's it.
Yeah. I mean,
can't talk.
the nerfs that they did were all good and justified. The main nerf again is a little bit weird, but I can definitely see Pug struggling with that one. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
which brings us finally
quickly.
to
It was only, look,
this.
we only took 15 minutes to get here. Okay, this
It's
is
true.
short for us.
We did. We were very very succinct. I say very non-succinctly. We are getting finally to the monk class tree. So I've pulled this up, and I've pulled it up in the Brewmaster one, so that neither of you are tempted to comment on the class side of it or the spec side of it.
I mean, I have it up on my screen. It says Windwalker at the top.
I mean, that
Mine
sounds
says-
like a you problem, but
I mean, maybe.
okay. So let's, I guess, real quick, a refresher, because it's been a bit since we really talked about talents and the talent tree structure. Just like a quick 2-minute refresher on how things are going to work in Dragonflight. So we're getting talent trees that are in some ways very similar to the old talent trees, pre-mop talent trees, where every level you get a point that's either a class point that goes in your class tree or a spec point that goes in your spec tree. When you're level 70, max level in Dragonflight, you'll have 31 class points and 30 spec points. And you just get to take whatever's in your trees. You can do things like taking Kick as a Mistweaver, or taking Instant Cast Vivify and Soothing Mist as a Brewmaster. Oh, I don't know why you would do the latter. There's a lot of different stuff here. These are also very early. This is still alpha, and pretty much the bottom third of the monk class tree is currently not yet implemented, or actually not yet designed in some cases.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess let's get into it. Why don't we start off with we'll make Babs kind of walk us through a little bit of the highlights from a Windwalker perspective of the class tree. Like, what are the neat things that you see there?
All right. So first thing that jumps out, since to be a good team player, I switched over to the Brewmaster tree.
Good choice.
I just would like to point out that yours is symmetrical. That
Yes.
is malarkey. The Windwalker one is just asymmetrical enough to be annoying, and the Mistweaver one is completely asymmetrical. I don't know
all
what
over the
they were
place.
even trying.
I'm just
but-
saying that means that the Brewmaster like spec designer is better.
Whatever. I mean, no comment. And I'll let them know that we think that. And all right, so to get into the class, there's some really cool stuff in here. The first things that jump out to really anybody who should be paying attention is the fact that you can get diffuse magic and dampen harm and fort brew and expel harm and other stuff like all together, like the sheer amount of defensive capability that you can have. Windwalker is not known. It is a squishy class, but it's a squishy class if you don't use any of the tools that you have.
Right.
And you should pretty much, even currently now have tools for just about everything. So now you're going to have even more tools for just about even more things. Um, which is just really nice. We talked a little bit. I was on Maximum stream the other day, and we talked about the fact that you could stack, dampen, diffuse, fort brew, touch of karma, and have almost a pseudo immune and take some enormous damage hit. Mistweavers I know can do the same thing with life cocoon instead of karma.
Mhm.
Um, and stuff like that. So it's the amount of defensive ability that you can all have at once in the class tree is pretty staggering. And then the other thing is just the
See what you did there.
amount of yeah, right. Uh, the amount of movement speed that you can have. 3 charges of roll and Tiger's Lust and transcendence with escape from reality, letting you zip all over the place. Like it's just you know, it's just so much movement, so
That's
much
a
defensive potential.
Escape from Reality. That's like a Mistweaver PvP talent right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
yeah.
it's a legendary
Okay.
right now. But it's just, I mean, the power that it brings, when you can use it is just insane.
So
It's
the
probably functionally the most overpowered thing in the entire tree for what it
That's a
is designed to
bold
do.
statement.
It does
Um,
a lot.
so what this talent does, after you use Transcendence Transfer, you can use Transcendence Transfer again within 10 seconds, ignoring its cooldown. During this time, if you cast Vivify on yourself, its healing is increased by 70% and 50% of its cost is refunded. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the most important part of this is the first bit, where you get to transcend back to your previous location after
Yeah.
transcending out.
I mean, they definitely both things have, a place for Windwalker, for me personally. The first bit is what's most important. The fact
Right,
that so now instead of as a Windwalker, you're gonna right now you place your transcendence kind of where the boss is, then you run out and transcend back.
right,
And then the next time something happens, you transcend out and run back.
right,
Now you're gonna be able to take your transcendence, set it in a safe spot, transcend out, and then transcend right back, because
After it jumps.
most things that you run out from are going to be within that 10-minute or that 10-second window. So it just
right,
you can just zip in and out. And then yeah, if you're too late or too early, now you have, chances are you're going to have maybe some buffed instant vivifies to cast on yourself that are then
right,
going to do insane healing.
right.
Um,
Buffed
and
instant
cost a
half
lot less.
cast
Like
in eyes. Yeah,
it's just the amount that this single talent can do is just unbelievable.
right. And I think even
And there
for
are gonna be
like,
plenty of times that you won't need it. Like, it'll be
yeah,
completely useless and there's no reason to take it. But when you can make use out of it, it's just gonna be incredible.
yeah. Looking at bosses in Sepulcher, um, for Brewmaster in particular, this would be really, really good on the Jailer. The
Mhm.
phase 2 mechanic where you run out and you break a pillar with your bomb, and then you have to get back and get healed. Um, right now, what you do is you put your Transcendence, like you were saying, Babs, on the boss, and then you transcend back after running out so that you can get, topped up and heal. Your healers can heal through the dot because you definitely can't do that yourself right now. Um, but what you could do with this is you can actually drop your transcendence where you need to go, transcend to it, and then transcend back after breaking it. And that is gonna, you get to spend more time on the boss. It's less dangerous. There's less risk that you're going to not quite be able to reach the pillar that you're supposed to break. You know, that's it's a good talent, even for Brewmaster. Like there's a bunch of different clever ways you can use this.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like it's a buffed version of, Warlock's personal portal, with significantly more things that it does.
Yeah, and there's also
Yeah.
like I don't want to really gloss over this. Uh, Brewmasters get diffused magic.
Yeah.
That is huge. So diffused magic, if you're not familiar because you've only played Brewmaster, uh, reduces magic damage you take by 60% for 6 seconds and transfers all currently active harmful magical effects on you back to their original caster on a 1.5 minute cooldown. So this is basically, for the purposes of tanking, a super buffed dampen harm.
Mm-hmm.
For magic damage, yeah.
So a lot of the tank busters that Brewmaster has struggled with, or the tank effects that Brewmaster has struggled with over the past couple of years, are magic effects or magic nukes of various kinds. And so dampen harm or diffuse magic is just like, the best thing for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and just real quick on escape from reality, just from a Mistweaver perspective too, is that the buff Vivify should also we can't test this on Alpha right now, but it should also apply to the cleave aspect of Vivify. So like basically any
Oh
renewing mist you
my.
have out is now 70% stronger with this. So like there's a really good, I know we're not supposed to talk about class stuff, but like in terms of synergy, this one ends up being really good, particularly like if you time it with a ramp or something like that, right? Where you
Mm-hmm.
have a bunch of renewing miss out, it's just a huge raid wide heal. So
Right.
um
And so one of the things about the class tree versus spec tree distinction is that for a lot of the class tree, it's supposed to be more like utility stuff, right?
mhm.
So you're going to see a lot of things like we're talking about defensives right now with Dampen Harm and Diffuse Magic and Fort Brute all being accessible at the same time for all three specs, as well as things like, Escape from Reality, obviously a very good utility talent, potentially with some throughput shenanigans for Mistweaver, where you maybe like you transcend just to get 10 seconds of 70% half cost,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
vivifies. Um, while you have all your renewing miss out, so it does like cleave and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it's only on like the next Vivify you cast versus all of them over those 10 seconds. Cause if it's all of them,
Oh, I guess it
then
does say if you cast Vivify on yourself.
yeah,
So you'd have to self cast it and then rely on the cleave.
which
Right.
doesn't matter. The cleave's like it's 70% stronger cleave's gonna carry anyway.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
why I'm
Well, and 50% costs too. I mean, it's gonna
yeah.
let you spam, bigger.
And I guess while we're talking about Vivify, let's go back up the tree a little bit because way up here we've got a couple of points that let us buff Vivify by 40%. That is currently a thing that I guess Brewmaster and Windwalker get as part of leveling, but Sweepers don't for whatever reason.
It's your aura buff.
It's our aura
So
buff. Okay, okay.
yeah.
Uh, and then right below it, Vivify is now instant cast.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't speak to what this means for Mistweaver, but for Brewmaster, this is a really nice quality of life thing. Where like if you're in a key and you're kiting and you've got a dot on you, you can now continue kiting while also healing yourself. You
Yeah.
don't have to like stop and try and squeeze in a Vivify in between expel harms or whatever, while also keeping out of range of everything. You can just keep booking it and heal as you go.
Yeah,
And
for or sorry.
say like when since I've been playing Pharaoh, like having instant regrowth is like it is just really really nice to be able to cast it while moving, to be able to
Mhm.
slide it in, to a second or two of downtime. Like having instant vivify is just going to be really nice to be able to cast it while running in out of things, especially now. Hey, if I'm already going to be running out with transcendence, like now it's going to be buffed and cost me less energy. Like it's just really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for Mistweaver too, it's nice. I mean, it's nice to be casting on the move. It's already a 1.5 second cast, so for us, like, it doesn't change how many you can cast now that it's instant. It's just you can do it while moving. Um, but the bigger thing is the 40% increase, which is I'm assuming they'll tune the numbers, but right now it's just Vivify is just 40% stronger for Mistweaver because they didn't tone down our Vivify.
Yeah.
Just it's just
Mhm.
40% stronger now. So we'll probably see that tuned a little bit down. If not, it's just those 3 points are just yeah. The class tree is like ridiculous, at least for Mistweaver, for like certain buffs to those things.
Right.
And this being one of them is just yeah. The instant cast is nice. I mean, it's probably something you potentially can skip. If you don't like if you think you can plan cast, but it's really good now. Instead of like casting Essence Font or Renewing Mist or anything that's like off cooldown, as you move, you can hit Vivify a couple times. You like run out of an ability or like move with the group, and still do a fair amount of healing. So um, it's definitely a nice change. I mean, the bigger change though will probably is actually in PvP for Mistweaver, because now you
You
have a
can't kick
spammable.
Vivify.
Yeah, you can't kick
Mhm.
Vivify anymore. So it's definitely gonna probably see like it's probably a bigger impact to that side, the PvP side of the class than the PvE side.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
Yeah,
That's
that
true.
makes sense. I
yeah,
didn't even think about that.
That's actually going to be
yeah,
the case for Brewmaster and, well, Brewmaster PvP lol. For Brewmaster and Windwalker in PvP as
Yeah.
well. You know, being able to instant cast, like as a Windwalker, you transcend behind a pillar, you sit there, you take your buffed instant cast Vivifies, and you just heal.
Mhm. Yeah, because I mean,
yeah,
Windwalker in PvP relies more on expel harm, but that's got a 15-second cooldown.
Right.
So being able to, keep expel harm on cooldown for the cheaper cost and the chi generation, but then have vivifies, you know, also is just going to be, it's going to be a big difference. Windwalker has historically been, struggled so hard in PvP.
Uh-huh.
I'm
yeah.
sure we'll hear people
Never
crying
ever
about
been a meta class. Definitely not one of the
it.
dominant specs for 3 years this expansion.
Not
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. But no, yeah, so that's like the Vivify talents they're interesting as to where they're placed. And I feel like we'll definitely probably see some numbers tuning, at least on the increase on the Mistweaver side. The instant cast though, I'm really interested to see if that actually stays, particularly like I said for PvP for Mistweaver. Um,
Yeah, I would
but
hate to lose it due to PvP, but
right,
I
yeah.
could see it not sticking around for PvP.
They could
Yeah.
theoretically just tone it down, reduce vivify healing in PvP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, to compensate. So no,
Mm.
yeah, definitely. I guess from there, I mean, on the cat, like on like it's the initial abilities, not the capstones, but the initial ones. In terms of that soothing mist node for like non Mistweaver sides, like what are your guys' thoughts on that's even a thing you'll take? You just actively avoid it.
I think that
Actively avoiding it.
Yeah,
I think you
I
take
mean,
it if you want the third charge of roll, and otherwise you completely skip it.
right.
gotcha.
Which, I mean, you're already going to have Tiger's Lust. You know, now you're going to have extra transcendence capability.
Hmm.
Like, what are you going to need a third charge of roll for? Most of us have been living with Tiger's Lust or three charges of roll, or Tiger's Lust or Chi Torpedo.
Hmm.
So now you're going to be able to have both. Uh, and you're just not it's just not going to be necessary to have the extra. It's not worth two, talent points. That would be much much better to be put in, you know one of the AoE group buffs,
Right.
or
Which
stuff
we'll
like
get to
that.
in just a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing I'll say is right now you can, without this node, you can get Tiger's Lust and Chi Torpedo, but your Chi Torpedo will only have a single charge.
Yeah, which is weird.
So if you do want Chi Torpedo, I do think that you take this. I think you suck it up and you go over here and you take the second charge of
Yeah.
roll so that you can get Tiger's Lust and also um, double Chi Torpedo.
I
Um,
think you just don't take Chi Torpedo in that
I mean,
situation.
I 100% agree because I don't
Like
like
you're
Chi
gonna have to
Torpedo.
take Chi Torpedo. Like if you're taking Chi Torpedo, it's because you need to go a long distance quickly,
Yeah,
right? Like Chi Torpedo is the marathon talent.
Right.
yeah, and I mean even
With
then,
that
like
extra buffs, like
doing so the last time that you really needed to run a marathon as a brewmaster was the jailer. There was one of
mm,
the pillars that you had to go and break that was quite a ways away, and you didn't really run Chi Torpedo for that because Chi Torpedo in the jailer's room is bait.
right,
Chi Torpedo is
end up
how
in a hole
you,
somewhere.
yeah, Chi Torpedo is how you fall in the hole and die. So you took Tiger's Lust instead.
Hmm.
Yeah. 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 No, I was, yeah, the thought, I mean, I know we moved it to Choo Peter, but the soothing mist thing is just, yeah, it's interesting that you guys would also take that one. Um,
Honestly, um, that should maybe just be Vivify.
Yeah.
I don't know that that works for the initial leveling process. So the way that the abilities are going to
Yeah.
work is that from level 1 to 10 you get your kind of like core abilities, your tiger palm, your blackout kick, those things that everybody gets. And then once you hit level 10, you start getting talent points. And those talent points give you the rest of your abilities effectively over the course of your leveling process. You get one every level. You can put it wherever you want, um, and you just get these things over the course of leveling. Um, so I don't know if it works to like give Soothing Mist. Whenever you get Vivify, if you get Vivify at like level 4 or whatever right now, right? Like, yeah, it's level 4. I don't know that giving you Soothing Mist there is really doing the same thing.
Right. Like how
Yeah.
often are you gonna when you have an instant cast potentially, a couple levels later, like yeah, you maybe will use it in that kind of whatever 5 level in between,
Hmm.
where maybe Soothing Mist does more healing than Vivify until you snag the Vivify buffing stuff.
Yeah,
Um, but it just doesn't like you can't move while doing it. You can't, you know, uh, do a lot of stuff. It lets you cast Vivify instantly, which then
and
you're gonna get in a couple levels,
it's
so
Yeah. Yeah.
even on top of that, like, if you're looking at doing this in group content, as a brewmaster, you can't cast this while tanking because you will
mhm.
stop being able to dodge things. You will die a very painful death, which means that you can only use this while you're not tanking, which basically means you cannot use this in group content except for raid. And
Mhm.
actually also in solo content because it's not worth casting this on yourself over just like dodging things.
Right. Or yeah, self casting just a spell that's
Yeah,
stronger. Right. Like
yeah,
Hell
recommend Shadow
Harm or
Studio.
Vivify.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that means that you're in a situation where you're like, I want to sit here and channel Soothing Mist on this target, like my co-tank or somebody that's getting a significant dot on them or something. And I just cannot see a scenario where you do that instead of letting the healers handle it. If the healers can't handle it, then you can just like dump your entire energy bar into instant cast Vivifies, and that just seems better than spending a GCD on Soothing Mist first.
So the thought that comes to my mind, and this is probably not it probably doesn't make sense mathematically, but Sun King is the only situation that I can think of where
Oh,
as a Windwalker, I would
yeah.
want to be pumping out as much single target healing. Like when I
Right.
was doing Sun King the other day, right? All I don't have any idea what to do. Like so I just cast Soothing Mist and spam Vivify until I ran out of energy and then or until I ran out of mana and then, rinse and repeat. Like you could be able to do that as a Windwalker, but for a significantly limited, functionality because you're going to run out of energy.
Right.
Well, right now, Soothing Mist does not have an energy cost. So,
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about
yeah,
allowing you to spam
Vivify.
Vivify.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's where the energy costs come out. But if I'm already going to have an instant cast to Vivify,
right.
or for a Windwalker where Vivify is really more or less the same speed as your GCD, you're not really gaining anything. For a
Yeah,
Windwalker, your Vivify, the gain for that is being able to do it while moving,
yeah.
and Soothing Mist prevents you from being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if Soothing Mist had a healing amp on it, like
Right.
Enveloping Mist does, then I could see there being a point to doing this for something like a Sun King boss. Um, but the healing amp is on Enveloping Mist, not Soothing Mist. So there's really like this talent just doesn't really make sense for Brewmaster or Windwalker to effectively
Mhm.
ever take. So the
Right.
only reason that you take it is if you want to access the very left side of the tree. There's this cluster of nodes that is only accessible if you take Soothing Mist.
Mhm.
And real quickly, what those are, we've got the second charge of Roll, very good, but maybe not worth the extra point in Soothing Mist. Crackling Jade Lightning range increased by 10 yards, very unlikely to be worth it. A 2.4% increase to all healing received, which is actually very good for Brewmaster, but you're not going to want to spend effectively 5 points to reach this because you'd have to take
Right.
Soothing Mist, you'd have to take the second charge of
Right.
Roll, I mean, have to. You would want to take that. But then you also have to take the increased range on Crackling Jade Lightning. And it's just like that's a lot of investment for 4% increased healing received. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then we've got Tiger Tail Sweep, another 2-point node, which is good. I use that on the Jailer, and it's actually very, very good there. But it's again like, are you going to spend 4 points for that? And then Elusive Mists, reduce damage taken while channeling Soothing Mist. So this one is just actually a dead talent if you're not planning to cast Soothing Mist.
Right.
Yeah.
And even still, like, who's gonna need that reduced damage taken? Like, maybe a brewmaster, but
I
6% is
think
like
that's a
nothing, and
yeah,
it removes your ability to dodge and parry,
yeah.
while doing it. Like, so
And if you're
the
gonna sit
loss of that is
there,
just silly.
if you're gonna sit there channeling something to reduce damage taken, you're gonna sit there channeling Zen Meditation.
Right.
It takes 60% reduced damage, not 6%.
Like, I think when we were talking the other day on Max's stream, like Trell said, the extra crackling jade lightning range is nice for brewmaster and keys,
Yeah, I can
right?
see
To
that.
be able to pull things farther back,
Yeah,
get to your line of sight quicker and stuff like that. But that's not going to be worth taking, 3 talent
I
points
could actually see you
that
doing
direct.
that in keys because the only really dead talent point there is Soothing Mist. You
Right.
don't want Soothing Mist, but if you have a kind of a flex point where you don't really, or a couple of flex points that you don't really have a strong need to put in any one location, I could see you taking Soothing Mist and just like never putting it on your bars, just to get
Mhm.
the third charge of roll really, and the Crackling Jade Lightning range. There is also, not to get ahead of ourselves, there is a talent in the Brewmaster tree that interacts with Crackling Jade Lightning. It is not something where you would really need the increased range because part of its effect is to make one of your melee abilities stronger. So
Yeah.
does not really
Yeah.
interact in a way that would make you want increased range on Crackling Jade Lightning. But
I mean, yeah, we have like Windwalker has Emperor's Capacitor in our tree,
right.
but Emperor's Capacitor is behind Phaline Stomp, which is a whole other uh, discussion. But B, like 10 more yards is not, if you need that 10 more yards somewhere, you're probably better off just waiting until, until the boss is a little bit closer.
So see, and there's some things I could see like if you've done the cheese strat for the final boss of Upper Karazhan, where you just sit outside the area, like there's the circle at the end of the spaceship that you're on.
Mhm.
That if you stand outside of that, the boss just continues chain casting his disintegration beam, and your casters can just sit there and destroy the boss without him ever doing any mechanics. Um, so Crackling Jade Lightning increased range, you could like sit out there with them and channel Crackling Jade Lightning.
Yeah.
Stack up
Cool.
your Emperor's Capacitor beforehand, get to that platform, sit there, and you do your one good Crackling Jade Lightning cast, and you sit there and wait for them to finish it off.
Cool. Cool. Can't wait.
Yeah.
So Hina Lover in chat is saying the only reason I can think of for the soothing mist talent is because of the healing statue. You place your healing statue down
Mhm.
to a 1 second soothing mist, and then your statue heals that target. How it currently works.
Right.
And that makes some degree of sense. So jumping down to the very bottom of the tree, we've talked about a lot, I think, of the highlights earlier, like farther up in the tree. I mean, I briefly mentioned that Mistweaver can get Spear Hand Strike, aka our kick now. So Mistweaver is going to have a melee kick that available to them. We're actually not a significant cost because like
No.
taking your poison and disease dispel is right there, and
Mhm.
then you might as well go and grab Spear Hand Strike as well, or you take Tiger's Lust and Paralysis, and then you go take Spear Hand Strike. So it's really not very difficult for them to get access to that. If we move down the tree just a little bit, we reach the past the 20-point gate. So at this point, you have to have spent 20 points on abilities above it, and then you effectively are left with 11 points to spend below this point gate. And there's 3 rows, and there's basically a giant cluster of talents. This is where, I guess, for the record, this is where Escape from Reality is. We also have the
Mhm.
Fatal Touch legendary from right now that reduces the cooldown of Touch of Death by 2 minutes. Also here, also going to be lots of fun. And then we have a
Mhm.
bunch of talents
Very good.
that give buffs to people around you. So one of them, it's a 2-point talent, 2 or 4% avoidance. There's another one. Let's see, where is it? 2 or 4% leech, and then of course wind walking, which got gutted. two
Yeah,
or four
there's
percent
no way it
movement
can stay
speed.
this way. Like
That
it's
should be
just
like that should be like 7 or 15% movement speed.
it. Yeah, that's it. Really should be.
A
Even
lot higher.
5 to 10.
Yeah,
But 7 to 15 would make it usable.
right. So it's currently 15%, right? Or is it 10%?
10%, I believe, without pulling my game up.
Okay. So yeah, 5-10%, easy game.
These
But
are oh, sorry, I was gonna say the group buffs are interesting, right? In terms of like
yeah,
the the avoidance one, I think is honestly people look at it and think it's not that big a deal,
oh,
but
this is huge.
Huge deal.
4% avoidance is massive in terms of like it works
Huge.
on any environmental damage typically or any like
Mhm.
boss AoE damage. So it's and it's just a flat reduction of 4%, right? So in
Yeah,
that case, like that's a mass amount of damage to your raid. I think it's going to depend number one on the range of these things,
right.
meaning if they're just
Right.
melee range.
Right now, for the other thing that got nerfed about wind walking is it got reduced to a 4 yard range. It's a 2 or 4 yard
Right.
range, which 100% cannot stay because 2 yards
No,
is like literally being stacked inside each other's hitbox.
Right, yeah.
no.
So I think for either the avoidance or the leech buff, right? Like we'll have to see what the range is on them. I don't know if they'll end up making them like room wide, so raid wide, meaning like
Yeah,
regardless where you stand it is. But if it's like, a 5 or 10 yard range, I feel like that might be a little too small
yeah,
because you're only gonna be able to hit the melee group in general, right?
yeah,
So it'll
Yeah.
like if it's like a Halandras fight, generally fairly useless unless during the transition you'll get a little bit of it.
right.
Um or even like a fight like Jailer, right? Like you'll miss out on a lot of it, particularly as you move from place to place. At least
Yeah,
as a Mistweaver, right? Because we'll like the way that I play that fight is I always move first, so I'm always ahead of the group wherever we're
right.
moving
Mhm.
towards. So like, yeah, I'm generally out of range, at least that type of range of people. So, but no, I think these are. I don't know, I like these. I don't know. They're cool nodes.
Yeah, I mean, being able to be a windwalker, like Leech is, Leech, the real benefit for Leech is going to be the Mistweavers and the Holy
Yeah.
Paladins, in melee range. But being able to bring 4% avoidance to the rest of melee, that's a pretty sizable, for what generally damages melee, it's pretty much just a flat 2 and 4%, damage reduction for the whole melee group.
Yeah,
Maybe even the tanks, depending on how big the range is and the
yeah.
hitbox is. Like that's a sizable chunk of damage that's saved, just by for 2 talent points.
There's a lot of tank mechanics as well that are actually just AoE hits. Anything that's a
Mhm.
frontal is an AoE hit, gets reduced by avoidance. There's a lot of those. This actually is also like, even if you're like playing Monk, playing Brewmaster, you cannot actually get, if it's the range is too small to give to other people besides like your co-tank. You still want this because it's just
Mhm.
4% reduced damage on a lot of tank hits. Not
Right.
everyone. Like
Even if it's
Rygolon, this
just
would
for
not be
you.
super. I mean, it would be good because of the downstairs phase. Like you would use this for the collapsing, uh, the star collapses downstairs. Um, it's useless upstairs because the main damage there is single target from the boss. But then there's things like, I guess the infamous example is Argus. Argus had this huge tank hit. There was also an AoE frontal, so it got reduced by avoidance. So if you had, you know, 4% avoidance, you just took 4% less damage from it, which then stacks with all of your other damage reductions from versatility, from stagger, and from cooldowns to just make you that much tankier.
Mhm.
Well, and the nice thing about this is because it's a percent and not a number, it's gonna be over on top of, if you're for some reason at the DR cap,
Right.
for which is what, 20% for avoidance, like,
It is
if you're
not.
at 20% avoidance,
It is
like,
not
and then it starts
currently
to DR.
capped, but it has
Well,
a.
yeah, but it's
It's got
it's a
like a
safe
big DR.
DR.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but this is just gonna be over on top of that, so this is not gonna DR at
Yeah.
all. Like, this
Yeah.
will this would allow you to basically be at 24% avoidance before the DR starts to kick in,
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
just a sizable chunk.
Yeah. I mean, having our entire melee group just take 4% less raid damage is
Mhm.
like pretty compelling. especially on a fight. You imagine something like Lords of Dread, right? During the swarms,
Yeah.
you're sacking melee for that fight anyway. Just during the swarms, all of your melee taking 4% less damage is big. It's really big.
And most of your I mean, for something like that, most of your range is going to come in and get stacked up too.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about pretty much the whole raid taking 4% reduced damage. That could very well be the difference
Right.
between a couple pulls, your healers being able to handle it or not.
And so this
Right.
is kind of there's one raid buff that people often forget about, and that's Devotion Aura from a paladin that is just 3% damage reduction to the whole raid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this is effectively. It's 4%, it's only on AoE hits, and it's an indeterminate range from you, the player, right now. But Devotion Aura, I guess, technically also has like a 40-yard range or something.
Right.
But that is this is basically that.
Yeah. Yeah, that any of the monk specs can bring, which is nice. 'Cause I think, I mean, to be fair, looking at what the talent that precedes it, like the touch of death talent, like I feel
Yeah.
like that's something that Windwalkers definitely will take, and even like Mistweavers will move over there. If not, just to get those 2 points, right? Because it's
Right.
just a solid up, or a buff
Right.
to the raid.
So
And a
the
brewmaster will already be there because of Fort Brew
and expel
and
harm.
Right.
Expel Harm. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, like I think most of the time that node will probably fall. Like if you have one of each, right? You're gonna want your Mistweaver grabbing Leech, and you're gonna want your Brewmaster, maybe and your Windwalker
Right.
grabbing the
The
Avoidance.
avoidance.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the leech one is actually more rough. So we talked about like the stuff that leads into this avoidance one is the touch of death talent. So the baseline touch of death is just the like kill it when it's got less health than you. The
Right.
talent here is the one that lets you use it on targets that have less than 15% health, and it does, reduce damage. Um, which actually, funnily enough, I think you don't take as Brewmaster because it lets you screw yourself. I think you skip this talent as Brewmaster, and in fact, you only take the one that reduces the touch of death cooldown, and then you just get the max HP execute every time. It's impossible to screw up. But
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that's going to depend very heavily on this, and we talk about this a lot more when it comes to the Windwalker tree, because I don't know how much touch of death stuff is in the Mistweaver, the Brewmaster tree, but I'd
none.
imagine it's not 5 nodes
No, it's none.
No.
like Windwalkers.
None.
So there, looking at the Windwalker tree, we very well could get the Legion version of Touch of Death. Just because Gale Burst exists in the Windwalker tree and a
Right.
bunch of other things
Uh-uh.
that really kind of point in that direction. So now that aspect, if we get the Legion version, then this, Touch of Death rank 2 talent doesn't make a ton of sense. So
Right.
looking at the Windwalker tree and the class tree, there's some, dissonance between
Right.
what's available. That's gonna make, certain things more powerful or less powerful depending on what we end up getting.
Right. And you can still, like I said, you can get the 1 minute touch of death cooldown
Right.
without actually taking this talent. So for Brewmaster, there's kind of a trap where Touch of Death does so much damage because your HP is so high, and doubly so right now with our tier set. Our HP is like incredibly high. That I would actually love to be able to turn off the piece that lets you push it and only get a third of the damage that you could get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
On a raid boss, you may not do that, especially if you've got 2 monks in the raid. You've got 2 monks in the raid, you
Right. Because that window
definitely
is incredibly
one of you
small.
takes this and the other one maybe skips it and you like coordinate that before pull. But like in a key, I don't want I don't want the 15% execute. I want the ability to just like do 200k damage with it reliably.
Mhm.
Like the
Yeah.
worst feeling is seeing that it's about to cross under your like current HP and you push touch of death and you just missed it. You just a little bit too early and you only get 70k damage instead of 200k. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a bad feels. But anyway,
Well, like for a Windwalker, to go off that bad feeling, like, there'd be times with Mango or, even playing with you, like where I'm popping Fort Brew so that my health, just ekes above yours. I mean, this
yeah,
was obviously before the tier bonus,
Yeah.
to where my Windwalker health just ekes above yours so that I can try and get that touch of death off
Yeah.
faster. And
Yeah.
then, all right, so then the Brewmaster is going to save their Fort Brew so that their health goes, just
Yeah.
that little bit higher. So I definitely, can
Which
understand where.
actually, because of the existence of dampen harm now, or diffuse magic for Brewmaster, you could actually save Fort Brew for this.
Mhm.
Like right now, only having effectively 2 cooldowns with Fort Brew and dampen harm, it's really difficult to justify saving Fort Brew for like that bigger execute as a Brewmaster. Like you probably do want to actually use Fort Brew as a defensive. You probably do. But if you've got diffuse magic instead, um, you can actually use Fort Brew as like a DPS button, which is
Mhm.
probably not what they wanted, but you could. Um,
Well,
I with the ability to like turn off the 15% damage or 15% health execute, I actually don't think it's necessary, but you could, especially if you take the reduced cooldown on Fortifying Brew. That's one of the, I guess, real quick. Fortifying Brew over here. So we get our baseline Fortifying Brew. It doesn't have the stagger effect that it gets from the monk spec or the brewmaster spec tree. Um, but there's a choice node right below the baseline Fortifying Brew that does one of two things. One of them is reduce the cooldown by 2 minutes, which is good for Mistweaver and for actually good for everybody, but mostly Mistweaver and Windwalker. And then there's one that the tooltip is wrong on Wowhead. If you look at it, it says it increases stagger. What this actually is increases your dodge and armor by 25% while it's active,
Mm.
which is very, very good for Brewmaster and Keys. I don't know. So Trell was talking about this on Max's stream that like maybe you go with the reduced cooldown so you can have Fortifying Brew up for every pull, right? Like there's a compelling argument there that if you just have Fortifying Brew up every pull, just do that,
mhm.
and you don't take the bigger cooldown. But with the other cooldowns we get, maybe it's worth making Fortifying Brew a cooldown that is more valuable when you do push it, and you rotate it
Mhm.
with your other ones. So we'll have to see how that works out, but both of them are pretty compelling.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the funny thing though is that, like as a Mistweaver, like we'll never take that.
Right.
Like a four
Mhm.
minute cooldown on another defensive for like what you have to sort of investigate over there. It would be different, I think, if the fortifying brew. Well, no, it wouldn't matter. I was saying like it'd be different if fortifying brew the ability point connected with the choice node for celerity and chi torpedo, but you're probably going to take spear hand strike anyway if you're heading
Right.
over there. So you already are at that node. So yeah, I mean I think the problem, not the problem, but with Mistweaver here, it's like you don't want anything beyond fortifying brew. And to be fair, if you're not going to the 2% or the avoidance node, then technically you really don't care about the
Yeah.
rank 2 touch of death, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And going through there. So like that whole corner is sort of a like unless you're getting 4% avoidance because you're the only person in your raid that can do it, you want to sort of avoid it. And going through fortifying brew to get it is like the least efficient way,
Yeah.
point wise. So
It's actually yeah, we'll talk a little bit about some of the dependency issues in this tree in a little bit. Maybe that can be
yeah.
our final piece of this. I want to talk a little bit about, so in order to get the avoidance one, like we said, you either have to take the rank 2 touch of death, or you have to take expel harm, and to get to expel harm you have to put 2 points into fortifying brew, and that requires 2 points into paralysis. Like there's actually like, okay, you want paralysis, you want fortifying brew. As a brewmaster, you want expel harm. It's super free to go down there and just like take the avoidance. um on the other side of the tree, we have the leech. Dead opposite. You and your allies gain an additional 2 or 4% leech. Uh, in order to get this one, you have to go through either the instant vivify, which is fairly good, or you have
Mhm.
to go down through the reduced damage taken while channeling soothing mists, which is not very good. I think even for Mistweaver.
Yeah, where I'm toying with the idea that this might be good depending on boss fight because you're going to be channeling anyway. We'll not talk about it. It could be
Yeah.
good.
It
There are
okay.
situations where it could be good.
It's situational. It's
Yeah,
maybe better in PvP, but I don't think you really want to channel soothing mist in PvP anyway, because then you get kicked and you're nature locked and you can't cast anything.
yeah.
Um, but then from there, you take either Chi Wave or Chi Burst. This is a choice node. You can pick one of the two. And this is actually a pretty good choice node. We currently kind of choose between these two in live, so pick one of these. And I need to unspend some points elsewhere so we can. And then you take during roll. You are immune to roots and snares.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
not does not do what you think. This is currently a legendary that no one, literally no one ever has ever at any point crafted for any reason. There is no reason to take this. It doesn't even do what you would want, which would be like dispel roots or snares when you roll. You cannot cast roll if you're rooted. You cannot roll out of a root with roll out. You can't do it. It's like it needs at least an additional line of like you may cast roll while rooted, and during roll you are immune to roots and snares. So like it doesn't dispel. It just like in theory lets you move during roll. And like if somebody tries to root you while you're rolling, then you just ignore it. But you have to right now you already have to be rolling. So it's like if you're rolling past a mage and they try and frost over you, you ignore it. But only if they cast it while you're rolling. It's so bad. It's incredibly bad. But it's mandatory if you want to take the leech.
Right. Yeah, and for Mistweaver to get over here, like you're already gonna get chi burst, generally speaking, anyway. Like, and I mean, I think this is just a 1 point node that I feel like is problematic.
Yeah.
Since we already talked about instant vivify, you're gonna be at instant vivify anyway. So to get down into the leech, it's really just a 2 point investment. To get down there. The rollout one is a weird talent just in general, because of what you mentioned, but it's it's not, at least for Mistweaver, it's not a huge investment to get to this side of the tree
Right.
and actually put some points in it.
Even for Brewmaster and Windwalker, it's not that bad because like Windwalker, you probably still want to take Chi Burst maybe as like a Chi generator.
Yeah.
For Brewmaster, taking Chi Wave or Chi Burst is not a hard sell. Like they're both pretty reasonable. Rollout is the really weird one. It's just such a. I'm shocked that they brought it back. Like I said, it's a talent or a legendary that got added in Shadowlands, and literally nobody has ever used it. I have not seen a single person ever have this legendary crafted, let alone equipped.
Right. It's extremely situational just because it's such a short window where it actually does what it says it does, which makes you immune.
Right.
And then you get to the leech one, which I mean, I think the difference here from avoidance rate is, again, we talk about what's the range on this, how much your raid can you hit with it, right? But just the fact that you get 4% leech is not, I feel like in general healers love leech just because it works anytime we heal another player.
Right.
And it works on every heal. So like any hot that we put out, any like direct heal that we put out, we just have a lot of healing, like at least it's a Mistweaver, you have a lot of healing events out when this, like, to make use of this. And it's 4% of that across the board.
Right.
So it's just generally very good. I feel like, and then, damage dealers and tanks sort of care a little bit less about leech just because of actually, I don't know why. I'm assuming it's just not as good as taking less damage, healing up the damage after the fact. But
it's also that there's a difference in scale of healer output versus damage dealer output, and especially tanks. Like,
yeah,
when you're tanking, you're doing half of a DPS's damage, so leech is healing you for half as much as a DPS's leech. And then right now, DPS numbers are like half of what good healer numbers are.
that's true.
So then again, DPS are doing half of what a healer would do with leech.
Yeah, that's true too. But yeah, I mean, this is at least for Mistweaver, this is almost a no-brainer. You'll generally always pick this up. Primarily, I'll say not because it's good, it's just easy to get to, and you don't need a lot of points after this, we'll say. I think we're getting to like the capstones here, but you don't, as a healer, you don't need, or Mistweaver, you don't need a ton of points past this point, I'll say.
Yeah, so
in the tree.
There's 3 more talents before we actually reach the capstone. So all of this stuff kind of starts to coalesce into 3 final lines. So starting from the left, we have Save Them All. When your healing spells heal more than 3 people below 35% HP, heal for an additional amount. The amount, this is not yet implemented, so we don't know the amount, but an amount. That seems actually fairly reasonable. Like you think of like a meteor on SLG or something, that's chunking the raid, and then your healing spells just like heal for an extra amount. It's not like great, but it is.
Yeah, it's gonna depend on number one, what that means in terms of like how they actually
Yeah,
implement it. Is it a buff that lasts for an X number of time after this occurs? Is there an ICD on it? And
yeah,
then to be fair, like the general issue with something like this in healing is that if the entire raid drops below 35%, typically you have a raid cooldown for that already.
yeah.
And typically there's not a lot of damage after that big event.
Right.
So
So
like
this
you're getting a
healing
healing buff
when you
to
don't need it
heal,
anymore.
yeah, when you don't need it. So it's an interesting one. I think it would probably be good on a fight where you're seeing a lot of spike damage on maybe individuals. Like
Right.
guardians actually generally might be good on, because whoever the stars are targeting are going to drop, so you'll do some healing to them when they get low, be able to stack it up, or get the proc right.
Yeah.
Rygolon 2, you'll have like random individuals. Really any raid fight where you have like one or two individuals taking a lot of damage. Um,
Yeah.
where like this potentially becomes useful. But it all depends too on like how they implement it. Meaning, is it just an additional like 4 or 5% all the time at this point, or is it just 4 or 5% for your next spell cast? Is it 4 or 5% for your next 10 seconds? So
Yeah.
a lot of ifs here on if this ends up being good, and a lot
Yeah.
of it just depends on either fight design or on like
Implementation.
how they implement it. Yeah, so
Um,
it's interesting, I guess.
Mhm.
so immediately below that, we have Summon Jade Serpent statue.
It's trash,
Um,
not garbage.
so this is what Hino was referring to earlier in chat. Right now, how Jade's Serpent statue works is you summon it, you put it down, it's a totem, effectively, and when you channel Soothing Mist, the statue also channels Soothing Mist on the target. That's it.
Ze- for 8 seconds. Number one key here, for 8 seconds,
Yeah.
meaning if you actually want to make 100% use of this, every 8 seconds you have to hit Soothing Mist at least for 1 second on a target. And then number two, the actual healing is fairly low.
Yeah.
So basically a low-ish spell power hot that goes on one target.
Mhm.
And so I mean, this is currently a talent. It competes with our Invoked GG and Refreshing Jadewind. That line, you never take this in
Yeah.
any content. There's always a better option.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I guess okay, we took it for Kel'Thuzad, or sorry, yeah, not Kel'Thuzad, but
Kael'thas.
KC
Yeah.
Kael'thas. We took it for Kael'thas early in progression, just because you needed the healing, like any additional healing helped. But in the grand scheme of things, like unless they expand what the statue actually does, if it stays this way, you basically avoid this as a Mistweaver. Um, Pretty much in any content. And to be fair, like honestly, depending on what the Windwalker one is, you probably take the Windwalker one.
Yeah.
If
Well,
it's a
we'll get to that.
if it's like another like damage based totem, right?
Yeah.
So
You probably do the same thing for Brewmaster. But we'll really jump over the Windwalker one real quick because of that.
yeah.
But for Brewmaster's side, we have Bounce Back. When a hit deals more than 20% of your maximum health, reduce all damage by some amount for 6 seconds. This is actually going to be shockingly difficult to trigger for Brewmaster. 20% of your health is like a lot, and it suffers from kind of the same problem that Mistweaver has with theirs, which is
Mhm.
that in a raid fight, if you're getting hit as a Brewmaster for more than 20% of your health, there's really two possibilities. One, you're fighting the jailer, or two,
Mhm.
you just took a big tank hit and your co-tank has taunted, and now you don't need the damage reduction anymore.
Right.
So this is going to be fairly niche. There are cases where there are definite cases right now in the game where this is good. It is just like, and I mean, even like if you took this on the jailer, you would effectively have 100% uptime on it. Like as long as you're tanking, you would have this damage reduction, and in that case, it would be like bonkers good, just like super, super, super good. If
Mhm.
the number is like a 10% damage reduction, right? Yeah, imagine just being able to take a 10% damage reduction that is active all of the time.
Yeah,
Um,
which I mean, I think maybe the other thing too for this, because they do say it lasts for 6 seconds, it might be good anytime, like you said, you take a big tank mechanic and you get taunted off of, but if the tank mechanic
as a
leaves
dot,
any sort of
yeah,
like a dot or something,
yeah,
Mhm.
like there's a couple, I feel like there's a couple of mechanics like that
Right.
which this could be useful for.
Um,
Um,
so the thing right now is that between Stagger and Celestial Brew, for a lot of those, you're not going to, if it works the way that some of the other effects worded like this have worked, it's not going to trigger because you'll
mhm,
actually not have your health drop at all, because Celestial Brew will absorb, you know, between Celestial Brew and Stagger, you'll absorb virtually all of it, and you'll take 10% of your max health in damage that actually hits your health bar.
Mhm.
So
right.
this just isn't going to trigger. Now, if it looks at pre-stagger damage or pre-absorb damage, then this triggers effectively 100% of the time, and it's just the most busted thing ever. So I don't think it can do that. But
Right.
like it could be like post stagger, but then ignore like Celestial Brew and stuff. I don't know. But this is going to be right now. I expect this is going to be niche. It is also not yet implemented, so we cannot test the actual behavior at this time on alpha. And then immediately below it, Summon Black Ox statue. So this is the AoE taunt statue, effectively. Um, the threat that it does is almost never relevant. So what it pulses threat around you over time, and then if
Mhm.
you taunt the statue, you can taunt all. It taunts all enemies around the statue to yourself, not to the statue, to you, the tank. And so that actually comes up fairly frequently. Like this came up on Orgazoa, it comes up on Vigilant Guardian, it comes up on just like all over the place. This is actually something that you would probably take in Mythic Plus pretty routinely, because what this does is you can drop this down in AoE taunt, basically on pull, and have every single pack in the dungeon in AoE taunt, and never have to worry about threat again, ever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's actually
I-
very compelling. But for raid, this is also a niche pick. Like there's a lot of fights where this doesn't do anything.
yeah.
So
And I think the Mythic Plus angle, now that you say that, is even something like as a Mistweaver you could pick up if you wanted to split packs, right? So like if you wanted
yeah,
to,
Mhm.
like, pull a mob out of a pack, you could drop statue first, trigger the pack, and then your tank could taunt the one mob you need to split and kill out of it, right? And your statue hopefully holds them long enough for,
ah,
your group
you may
to
be
blow up that winner.
overestimating the amount of health that the statue has at a decent key level. Like
That's true too. Yeah, that's true too.
it will
Yeah.
not live very long with things beating on it. This is
Mhm.
of course also, as far as like world and kind of casual content goes, this is the premier AoE farming talent. Like you drop
Mhm.
statue in an area and it just like picks up everything. It actually got a range nerf specifically because of that, because it was too good at that, because it would also tag them. So you could just like block other people out of farming an area by dropping statue.
Nice. I like that. I like that.
This
So
is
it
my
got a
area.
range nerf in BFA for that reason.
Well, roll a better class. That's my solution.
It's just
Oh man.
empathy just washing over me
Yeah, just
so much.
it's too. I have too much to give at this point.
It's true. What
So
happens when you have kids? There's just no empathy left for other humans.
It's true. It is true.
that's what you get for
Oh.
playing Mistweaver. Um,
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
which brings us to the Windwalker section in the middle, which is
Mhm.
definitely the best of the like three things hitting three enemies, whatever, like doing something with three targets abilities. When three consecutive abilities hit more than three enemies, deal an additional X% damage. Babs, what do you think about that one?
So there's a lot that we don't know about this yet, obviously, because it's not implemented. The wording of it seems like it should be relatively straightforward. But historically, stuff worded like this is never straightforward.
Right,
Um, so there are questions like, what is the time frame?
right,
If I hit two abilities, or if two abilities hit, say I'm finishing up a Mythic Plus pack, and my last, say my spinning crane kick and my whirling dragon punch hit four targets.
yeah,
Can I then do I have to, I should say, start the next pack with an AoE ability
yeah,
that hits more than one target? Or does it reset in between?
yeah,
Does something like, would that be something like, all right, so then I have to start, maybe I don't have chi, I can't use Tiger Pump because it says consecutive abilities.
Right.
right? So do I then have to start and flying serpent kick into the middle, to hit everything? Do I
Right.
have to,
I mean, you can chi
make sure
burst
I
in
have
theory,
enough?
right?
Right, chi burst. Do I have enough chi for spinning crane kick or fists of fury? There's other things like in the Windwalker tree because we have shadow boxing treads.
Yeah.
Your blackout kick can hit 2 additional targets. So, okay, maybe you only need 1 chi. You go in, you start with blackout kick. It could be fantastic,
Yeah.
right? If you start with blackout kick and that hits 3 targets and it puts Mark of the Crane on 3 targets, which
Oh
it
man, that
should
sounds good.
almost certainly do, you're probably gonna be starting most trash packs that way anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so that would be a really awesome way for it to function. The flip side of that is, other questions. All right, how consecutive does consecutive have to be? Can I use an AoE ability that doesn't hit 3 ability, things? Is the check for whether you check that box, does it check for the ability or does it just check for targets hit? Um,
Mhm.
Stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff. How long is the duration?
And
How, if you do 3 abilities and the 4th ability hits 3 enemies, if you do 4 abilities in a row, does the buff refresh?
right.
Oh, yeah.
Does it start over? There's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that could very easily take this talent from being essential anytime there's going to be more than one target to being so hilariously useless that it's just not functionally, useful to even attempt.
Right. I think actually, funnily enough, I think this talent is better for Brewmaster.
Oh, for
Uh,
sure. 100%.
like you have all of those questions, right? And for Brewmaster, the answer is we don't fucking care. All of our abilities are going to hit 3 or more targets in an AOE environment, in a Mythic Plus environment. All of our abilities are going to be hitting 3 or more targets because of we also get shadow boxing treads in our spec tree. So blackout kick's going to hit 3 or more targets. Spinning crane
Right.
kick, 3 or more targets. Keg smash, 3 or more targets. Breath of fire, 3 or more targets. Rushing jade wind probably doesn't trigger this, but 3 more targets. Like literally the only thing we're going to have 2 abilities that will not function in AoE. One of them is Tiger Palm, and we won't cast that in AoE.
Nope.
The other one is we actually get Rising Sun Kick now as part of the class tree. I kind of glossed over this earlier. It's one of the starting nodes. It's currently hilariously overtuned on single target. So that's just a numbers thing though, but it's gonna potentially throw a big wrench in the Brewmaster rotation and force us to like remath everything out. But Rising Sun Kick is the other one. So like, but you can easily envision our like AoE rotation in keys being blackout kick, keg smash, breath of fire, spinning crane kick, blackout kick, keg smash, spinning crane kick, and just like doing that
Right.
on loop and just maintaining this buff with 100% uptime.
Yep. Because you
Yeah.
don't have those single target builders
Right.
like Windwalker has that
Yep.
we have to use.
Yep.
The the other thing too, and I don't know if this actually ever occurs for you guys, but when it says 3 consecutive abilities, I'm assuming that if you, like, casted 2 AoE abilities and then rolled, it breaks the chain. Or
Probably
you
Right.
cast
so.
2 AoE abilities and then Purifying Brew, and
And
it breaks the chain.
And
that's
but sometimes that is the case, and
and sometimes
sometimes
it's
that's
not.
not the case.
So
Yeah,
look
that's
at
true.
Windwalker Mastery as an example of how complicated this can get. Where
Right.
Windwalker Mastery effectively has a whitelist of spells that affected it all. Spells that break mastery, spells that contribute to mastery. So if you press Fortifying Brew, that does not count for Windwalker Mastery. If you cast Flying Serpent Kick, that does, because it's on the whitelist. It's on the I mean technically it does damage, but like practically
Mhm.
you only use it for the mastery reset. Or for mobility.
Mhm.
But so that's the kind of thing where like they could put together a whitelist of like hey, Purifying Brew, Celestial Brew, all your defensives don't count for this, so you're not gonna have to worry about breaking your streak in order
Mhm.
to trigger this. Um, but on the other hand, like if Purifying Brew, I guess that is the big thing. If Purifying Brew breaks this, that makes it way worse
Right.
for Brewmaster because you're gonna be purifying a lot as things currently stand.
Right.
Yeah.
Does roll break it? Like you
Yeah.
said, like roll for all 3 specs, like, that's a big deal. Do I have to just squeeze in, a throwaway flying serpent kick or something so I can roll out? Because if
Right.
I flying serpent kick out of something, there's not 3 targets over there,
Yeah,
but there's 3 targets here, like, how much do we have to play around that?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it can really take it from being, "Oh, this is awesome," and largely automatic to, "Oh, this is terrible. I hate how much I have to think about this."
Yeah, the micromanagement of it, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I guess for like Mistweaver in terms of abilities, we only have one baseline, which is spinning crane kick, right? That'll hit more than 3 targets. I guess I mean, and we'll have chi burst if you take it, and then we actually have our own version of shadow boxing.
Mhm.
But it says it only strikes the wording seems weird. It's not implemented yet, but the wording is either it only strikes 2 targets or it's your blackout kick target plus 2 more. It just depends on how they implement that. So we
Right.
might have a way to also trigger it, but you won't take that talent generally ever.
Right.
At least in the way it's the currently laid out. So
Or you
yeah,
won't
the
take it
Mistweaver,
for the talent itself. You might take it for what is beneath it.
right? The I mean the heal, yeah, the healing side of the things, yeah, for sure. So, um, but yeah, no, this is. I mean, I'm interested to see how this works, particularly like I said for Windwalkers, and if it works very nicely
Mhm.
for Brewmaster, it'll be funny if everybody just starts to talent to the whatever this final capstone is.
Right. So the
Right.
final capstone is not actually there. Not yet
Uh,
implemented. It's not really I think designed. Or at least to a point that they're happy to show it off. Um
The
we
w
suspect this is a
yeah.
Zuin statue, right?
Yeah, there is a texture, there is a model in the game that was data mined, I don't remember when, that is basically a Zuen statue. So we assume that that's what this is gonna be. What it does, remains to be seen. Years ago at this point, almost a decade ago, maybe a decade ago, now that I'm thinking about it, there was a Zuen statue. And what it did was you would pop it down and it caused melee strikes that were done, if I remember correctly, melee strikes that were done in a certain radius of the statue zapped out light or nature damage to targets, to enemy targets within range. So it was just kind of a damage amp.
Right.
So that could be, it could be that, it could be a wind, a wind rush totem, type situation.
Right.
um Certainly I wouldn't mind, if it were to multiply wind walking, by 10, for extra, for 30 seconds or whatever, while whatever while it's up. There's a bunch of other things. My leading hypothesis, or maybe just, what I want, is because evokers have the cooldown that increases melee range by like 20 yards or whatever.
Uh-huh.
If this was a statue that you put down at range and then melee attacked the statue and the statue zapped, the boss or something like that,
Mhm.
to allow melee another way to attack from range, I think that would be really cool. I have long, you know, uh, advocated for Windwalkers being a range spec. So having a tool that,
That's just because
would
you want to not
enable.
be in the melee pile.
Yeah, but I still want to play Windwalker. Like,
That's
and
awesome.
I think of all the melee specs, Windwalker has the most potential to become a range spec. Um, so having a talent that does something like that, I mean, that would be pretty big, for melee to be able to do that, to continue, even if it is just the same as Evoker, an AoE, melee range increase.
Mhm.
That can be a pretty useful thing on many fights.
I have a hard time imagining something for this statue that would not be better for Brewmaster than the Ox statue. Except in cases where you actually do want the AoE taunt. Like the Ox statue is really just not, as far as capstones go, it's fairly unexciting.
Yeah. I mean, I think to be fair, even like the Mistweaver suffers a very similar one on our side.
Mhm.
It's just not
They're
not
all very
exciting, which
forgettable.
yeah.
At least like the Brewmaster one, like the Ox statue is very good. Like let's not get that wrong. The Ox statue is good, and losing Ox statue, like not having Ox statue somewhere in the tree, would be really bad for
Right.
Brewmasters. Versus like Mistweaver, if there were no Jade Serpent statue, you would literally not care.
Yeah,
Well,
no,
and like most of the time, if you have the extra 2 damage, the extra 2 points, grabbing bounce back
Right.
is really nice.
Yeah. That would actually be
For the
really
most
nice
part.
for Windwalker and Mistweaver.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe
I mean,
more
it's
so
just anybody.
than
Yeah.
Brewmaster. Like you think like 35% is like a raid DR CD category, right? But just taking
Right.
20% of your max health, that's like the bombs on the jailer are 20% of your max health.
Right.
And
Right.
then you sometimes drop from the bombs on the jailer into the torments on the jailer, and you have the DR from the first hit to reduce the second hit and give you like a greater chance of surviving. And like that actually seems really good for not
Yeah.
Brewmaster.
That's
And
the
our limit is smaller, right? Because
Yeah,
our health pools are smaller.
right.
So it's much easier for a Windwalker or a Mistweaver to hit that 20%. The same damage is not going to take a Brewmaster down below that threshold.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but I think looking at I mean, I know we don't have too much time here, but looking at the whole class tree, right, in terms of like from at least like Mistweaver's perspective, I think we can find uses for pretty much anything on like the Windwalker things or the Brewmaster things
Yeah.
to make use of, which I don't see Brewmasters and Windwalkers having the same luxury. Like for
No.
Windwalker, right? Maybe it's the damage reduction, and it's definitely the damage amp, right? Side of it, but you have zero healing spells. So you don't care about the save them all talent,
Yeah,
right?
it's literally not possible for
No,
Brewmaster
there's
to
no
trigger
way.
save them all. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Like we have one spell, I guess.
It would
We
have to
could
be
trigger it with
Chi
like
Burst.
Chi Burst. Yeah, it literally
Yep.
just Chi Burst.
That's all we got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So I feel like at least as a Mistweaver, the general class tree, like having the options are nice. There are definitely some like dead areas and like some weird pathing areas, particularly like I feel like the left hand side, like Mistweaver in general is going to go towards the middle almost immediately and maybe to the
Well,
far
yeah.
right, pick
I
up the
mean,
interrupt. And the left hand side is basically fairly dead, at least in the
yeah.
middle areas. So
yeah, I
I
mean
think
Brewmaster is
like
going to be the same way.
I think
yeah.
looking at it, like when my first impressions were that like for Mistweaver, it's okay, cool. Here's all this stuff from the other specs that I can now use.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. For Windwalker, it's here's all the stuff that I have, and now I get to have more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for Brewmaster, it's kind of a similar situation. If here's all the stuff that I'm having, here's even more. Oh my gosh, and here's diffuse magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so I mean I think overall, pathing, obviously the big head scratcher for me is paralysis required for 4 brew. That
Yeah.
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me. Uh,
Yeah.
just because it doesn't make any sense. Like the fact that a Windwalker has to take paralysis, like I'm not saying paralysis is useless because it is useful,
Yeah.
but the frequency in which it's useful is nowhere near as often as Fort Brew. Or, I mean, Windwalker we have to go through all that and to get to expel harm.
Yeah,
That's a
Expel
lot.
Harm is the weird one looking at it from a Windwalker perspective because it's so like it's a rotational ability. You use it to generate chi.
Uh huh.
Um,
Then you have to like, or maybe I don't need the defensive, right? Maybe diffuse and dampen and touch of karma are enough on this fight, but okay, I have to go into all this stuff just to get
your
expel harm
rotational chi
anyway.
generator, yeah, because
It's a big
it's
cost.
it's the cheapest chi generator, right? It's 15 energy
Mhm.
for a chi.
Yep, you pretty much want to use it on cooldown.
Yeah,
And it enables us to generate chi and manage our energy cap, away from the target. Like
yeah,
keep mastery going, all that stuff. It's one of the most universally useful abilities and that a Windwalker has.
yeah,
And Fort Brew is generally going to be useful, and there's a lot of times that paralysis is going to be useful. But it's still a big cost to get down to expel harm.
yeah. I mean, for Brewmaster, like we're pretty much always going to take Fort Brew because we're a tank, and like you're gonna take Fort Brew because it's always good, and you're gonna take Diffuse Magic when it's good, and you're gonna take Dampen Harm when it's good. But you're always going to take Fort Brew.
Right.
And as a result of that, you can always take Expel Harm, but you don't need to. I mean, I think actually the argument here is that you want the avoidance talent, and your options are pick the rank 2 of Touch of Death or pick Expel Harm. And I think in 99% of the scenarios, you just take Expel Harm and you use that to unlock your avoidance talent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, not yet implemented stuff aside, some of the weirdness with the capstones aside, where like honestly, they're not very powerful compared to a lot of capstones. Like I guess for
Yeah.
Brewmaster, like being able to take Ox Statue without giving up Ring of Peace is very compelling for keys. Because that was always the trade-off that we have right now, is you take Ring of Peace or you take Blackhawk Statue, and Ring of Peace is just better in so many ways. But if you can have both, then you get to have an AoE taunt for every pack, and also Ring of Peace to handle casters and Sanguine and whatever other repositioning things you may have. Which is very good. So there's definitely like a compelling reason to like take both and always have an AoE taunt and Ring of Peace and your Windwalker damage amp.
Right, exactly.
But you definitely end up skipping, like, I would probably skip most of the left side of the tree. I would not take very many Mistweaver things. Like, I would, if I wanted to take Ring of Peace and I wanted to take the Windwalker damage amp and I wanted to take Blackhawk Statue, I would just not take any of the Vivify powers. I would just skip them all.
Yeah. Which I think is fine from that perspective.
Right, which does leave you with, like, that leaves you with Diffuse Magic, Dampen Harm, Fortifying Brew, Reduce cooldown on Fortifying Brew, Ring of Peace, Ox Statue, our theoretical Zuen Statue, the 1 minute Touch of Death, the damage amp for hitting 3 targets, and, like, that's just a huge amount of value from this tree. And I still have a single point left that I can use on Soothing Mist.
Heck yeah.
1 point left for Soothing Mist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to kind of wrap things up, I think this tree is very good for Brewmaster. Like, the end of the tree, I think needs work. Some weird dependency things with like Paralysis and Soothing Mist that I think need work, but overall I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree. I think, other than the capstones being like I think the problem from my point of view is that the end of the class tree just isn't very compelling. Like the final 2 rows from like a pure healing perspective are just not exciting, right? Like they're not, hey, wow, I want to get down here. There's a bunch of stuff before that I want to pick up.
Yeah.
Right. That I think is cool.
Yeah.
But once you get to the bottom, it's just like, like I'll just put all my points in like the middle tier, set of things, and then maybe get this end stuff. So
I could definitely see there being builds where you actually don't take anything below the 20-point gate. You spend 100% of your points before you hit the 20-point gate.
Oh yeah.
And you don't take any of the statues, you don't take any of the auras, you don't take any of the final row stuff. Like maybe you'd still take the 1 minute Touch of Death, and that's like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we will see. This is one, especially with some of the stuff being so not yet implemented or under construction at the bottom. I expect some fairly significant changes to that part.
Yeah, I think almost, if nothing else, I think we'll see a change to the right side. Kind of free up that paralysis into Fort Brew stuff. I think that just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. But we are over time, and I know Babs is supposed to be doing DMing for the Peak of Serenity D&D game.
Yeah, boy.
Which, if you are a patron like this show and you want to support it and the other work that we do over on the Peak of Serenity, you can support it over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And one of the perks of being a patron is that you can join the Peak of Serenity D&D campaign DM'd by Babylonius himself, which is starting 3 minutes ago. And that means
the nice thing about being DM is it doesn't start till I get there.
Yeah. But that does mean that we need to wrap up the show for today. So thank you all for listening. And next week we will be picking one of the specs and going through a deep dive in their spec tree. I don't think we know which one yet. It's going to depend on who we can get on the show, because we're going to want to get a couple of people from each spec on the show to really do a deep dive on their talent build.
Yep.
But we'll figure that out. It's going to be one of the spec trees next week. But that is it for the show today, if I can talk. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.